Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Northeastern University Pharmaceutical Industry Fellowships webinar. We're just going to give everybody a minute or two to join, and then we'll get started. All right, everyone, we're just going to give about one more minute, and then we'll get started. Alrighty, everybody. So in the interest of time, we're going to get started with our webinar. Today, we're going to be talking to you a bit about the Northeastern University Pharmaceutical Industry Fellowships. We'll give a brief background on what it's like in Boston with the Biotech Center of the World, and then talk a bit about our program, and then get into a great Q&A session with several of our fellows here today. So to start it off, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Lauren Dodd. I am the first year Global Medical Affairs Fellow at Alnylam.
Hi, everyone. This is Helen Weinberg, and I'm the Global Regulatory Affairs Fellow at Vertex.
So before we get into our program, we just really want to highlight what we think is some of the best parts of being in Boston for a fellowship program. So as many of you know, Boston is a hub for biotech. We have the three pillars of innovation, from drug development, research, and medicine. So with drug development, we talk about all of our companies that are here: Alkermes, Alnylam, Bluebird Bio, Blueprint, Flexion, Tetraphase, Vertex. All of these companies are on the cutting edge of innovation and really bring forward what can be only done here in a center with research and medicine partners. The research that's done here help all these drug development companies bring their drugs to market. Places like Northeastern, Harvard, and MIT. And then we are coupled with great centers of excellence when it comes to the medical field, such as BI Medical Center, Brigham and Women's, Dana-Farber, MassGen, and all three of these together bring together the pillars of healthcare in medicine. So Boston is, as I said, the world's leading cluster of biotech. There are over 550 biotech companies with over 100,000 employees and 20,000 jobs added over the last 10 years. This is great to know when you're going into a fellowship, that there is such a great job market around you once you finish your fellowship. There are roughly 1,800 and counting drugs in R&D, and that one location where you can find all of this is right here in Boston. So what is biotech? Biotech is small, innovative, and scientific. A lot of the companies that are here are not very big relative to the pharmaceutical industry. The research-driven field work that gathers data and disseminates pharmaceutical knowledge is what sets us apart from other companies and other fellowship programs. By being at a small innovative company, you're able to integrate with the research and the innovation that's happening on a daily basis. So what's really happening in biotech is that we're transforming breakthrough science into life-altering therapies. In a biotech company, there are a lot of functions for pharmacists, from medical affairs to medical information, regulatory affairs, commercial, pharmacovigilance, health economics, outcome research, and more. Something that we want to note is that when you're applying for a fellowship, try to choose one area of focus and have a really good reasoning as to why you want to be in that function. We'll get more into these as we go on, but luckily the Northeastern Fellowship Program has all of these to offer and more. I'll pass it over to Helen.
All right, so like Lauren said, Boston is the center for the biotech industry for innovation, and with that, it's always continuously growing. And so we want to highlight that Northeastern is also a growing program. So over the past 5 years, we've grown immensely, doubling or making sure that we broaden our horizon on the different biotechs that Northeastern partners with, both increasing the number of companies that we partner with and also the number of fellows that each company takes. So that really speaks to the innovation side of Northeastern. You know, we're not just stagnant in our progress. And so we want to make sure to highlight that over time, as the biotech industry is always changing and continuing to grow, we are as well. And as our companies grow, our network, which, as you all know, is incredibly important in the biotech industry and the pharmaceutical industry, is important. So as we grow our fellowship and our partnerships, our networking increases as well. So just to highlight Northeastern campus, as Lauren stated, in the heart of Boston, a lot of different experiential programs, a lot of different research opportunities that you're able to be involved in. That's the beauty of partnering with an academic institution, is you're able to bridge the gap between the research and development side and the innovation part that you're doing at your specific company, and then also partnering with Northeastern, which is a world-renowned research institute, making sure that you have a lot of opportunities there. It's really incredible being in the heart and the center of Boston. There's basically a biotech or a pharmaceutical company on every corner. So like we said, the network is super important. So being close to other colleges and other campuses that are also innovating and also producing different research initiatives for the biotech companies is a very important reason to be in the Boston area. Coming from the Midwest, I think it's super important that, you know, you're in the heart of everything. The excitement is there, being especially in the Northeast. And then specifically what the Northeastern Fellowship can offer. So like we said, a rapidly growing program. Over the past 5 years, we've grown immensely, and we continue to grow immensely, adding new programs and adding the number of fellows that we're able to connect with and able to bring into the program. And then again, being close to that Boston epicenter is super important. Always doing cross-functional events between all of the different companies, always trying to network and bring different companies on board. And then again, with the smaller companies and the biotech companies, that's more opportunity for a PharmD fellow to have more stake in their education and have more stake in their specific role in their company.
Hi, my name is Alexandria Jarvis, and I am the Medical Affairs Fellow with GSK, and I graduated from the University of Rhode Island.
Hi everyone, my name is Cindy. I'm a Global Medical Affairs Fellow at Vertex, and I recently graduated in May, also from Northeastern University. So Northeastern definitely hits close to home for me, and I'll just dive right into more about our program. And so why become a Northeastern Fellow? For me and for many others who are in this program, there's many advantages in the slide. And so basically you can earn a teaching certificate upon completion of the teaching and learning seminar. We definitely utilize a layered learning model. So you definitely get to co-precept students who are on APPE experiences or whether they're on internship programs throughout the Northeastern's co-op program. There's also opportunities to create, present, and publish scholarly research, either by collaborating with industry partners or with the university itself. And through that, you definitely get to engage faculty who's also participating in some really groundbreaking research, either in biotechnology, nanomedicine, immunology, health informatics, and other areas of interest. And so, like we said before, Boston definitely is a center for biotech. So there's many opportunities to network with residents and other Northeastern fellows through different professional development programs, as well as other opportunities. And I think personally, I think this is the best part. We do get tuition reimbursement for continued education and degree advancement. So personally for myself, I'm considering applying for an MBA next semester. And so everything will be covered through this program. And kind of touching upon what I already mentioned. So there's definitely many opportunities to learn, conduct research, teach, as well as connect with fellows, as well as everyone within the Boston biotech area. And Northeastern itself, we are the fastest growing fellowship program. We only had one company in 2017, and we had 5 companies in 2018. And every year we're adding more and more companies and more fellowship opportunities. And like we mentioned before, we are a huge university, so there's definitely opportunities to learn and get graduate degrees that kind of stem outside of your PharmD degree. And lastly, what I want to touch upon is the different functional areas that are available. And so these are the partner companies that are specifically recruiting for the 2021 to the 2023 cycle. And so you can see that there's many different fellowship functional areas available that you can choose from. And so what our partners really pride ourselves in is we really allow the fellows to be a huge contributor of the overall success of the product portfolio through a different array of different functional areas. And so you can see all the fellowship functional areas that we're recruiting for next cycle. And so one tip is that when you do apply, it's recommended to choose one area of focus, or at least have a good reasoning why different functional areas are chosen. For myself, I did medical affairs as well as clinical development because they do tie hand in hand. So if you do choose different areas, just know your strong reasoning behind that decision.
Now we'll go through the application and virtual interviewing process for the Northeastern programs. It's really important just to remember that this is specific to the Northeastern affiliated programs. So here you can see the Northeastern application timeline along with the virtual interviewing process that candidates interested in the program will be expecting to go through. We currently have our application portal open. It opened on the 15th of September. We do have a rolling application portal, which means that as applications are submitted, our application review committee can start taking a look at those. So it is very important to apply as early as you have that application all set up. Our application includes a CV, an unofficial college transcript, and a cover letter. We get asked very often if a cover letter should be specific to each program. It does not necessarily need to be, but our application portal does allow you to submit individual cover letters to each program that you're applying to. After the application is submitted, you will be contacted in terms of a phone interview. If you will be moving forward in the process, the phone interviews can start happening anytime within the end of September all the way through November. After the phone interview, virtual interviews will be set up. It's really important to remember that we will not be doing our virtual interviews with the mid-year timeline that normally takes place. So yes, mid-year is still happening this year in the virtual space, but we will not be conducting our interviews based on the mid-year timeline. After the virtual interviews, which can be about 2 to 3 rounds, we will have a final virtual interview, which simulates the typical on-site that you would have with the program. Another question that we get asked very frequently is the letters of recommendation. Those are not due at the time of your application submission. Those are due, final deadline is December 4th, but it is preferred to have those in by our priority deadline of November 15th. Those can be emailed to pharmdfellowships@northeastern.edu, and the letter writer should only write one letter for the Northeastern component, for the Northeastern programs. They can include the companies of interest for you in the subject or within the body of the email. If you have any questions, you can reach out to that PharmD Fellowships at northeastern.edu and we will answer those questions. Our application portal is through nufellowship.com. We do not require PPS. We do not require PPS enrollment or being a part of registration. So just some tips for phone interviews. These phone interviews, the first round will be a basic interview with just a fellow. So this is a time for not only the fellow to get to know you, but also for you to get to know the fellow. So make sure that you have all of your questions prepared about the program, about the company, and about the requirements to make sure that you are on track to have all of your requirements in for the Northeastern Fellowships. And as we move into the virtual interviews, this is a new space for everyone. So yes, it is something that you are going to be new to, but also we are going to be new to this as well. None of us have sat on the other side of a virtual interview either. So it's going to be something that we're all kind of going through together for the first time. What you can do to prep for this is to really build your resume. Make sure that you have your resume set up so that we can see those industry-related experiences, whether those are direct industry-related experiences or if they are transferable skills that you can apply to project management, research, teaching. And then also investigate the company. Learn about the company's mission statement, learn about the disease states that the fellow program will be working in, and if that program is working on the approved products or the pipeline products, just making sure that you know the companies that you're talking to goes a very long way. And as I said, it's a new space for all of us, so practice makes perfect. I mean, sitting down and practicing with people that you know are also going to be going through this may go a long way. Or if you have a mentor that has conducted interviews before, going through this and practicing the nuances of a virtual interview will definitely help you. And lastly, because the timelines have changed and we aren't tying ourselves to the mid-year dates, it's really important to be communicating with your APPE preceptors. You may be on an APPE rotation and a fellow wants to do an interview in the middle of the afternoon. So if you have that conversation up front with your APPE preceptors, it can definitely make a huge difference when you do need to maybe ask for some time off later on.
All right, everybody, we're going to go into the Q&A section. Everybody on this panel is going to introduce themselves. Many of you submitted questions prior to the fellowship webinar, which we really appreciate. So we're going to go through those questions as well as questions that have come in live. So I'm going to hand it over to Thomas to start off the introductions.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Thomas Solomon, and I am the first year clinical development fellow at Alnylam. I am a graduate of the University of Cincinnati.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Whitney Yen. I am the Global Medical Affairs Fellow at Blueprint Medicines. I am a recent graduate of University of Maryland School of Pharmacy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Lee. I am the first year Global Medical Affairs Fellow at GSK Oncology, and I am a recent graduate from MCPHS University in Boston.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caitlin Albrecht. I am the Regulatory Affairs Fellow at Alnylam Pharmaceuticals, and I am a recent graduate of the University of Minnesota.
So the first question we have here today is how are the individual rounds of interviews spread out in terms of timeline?
Thanks, Jen. I can take this one. So this will really depend individually on the companies. Each company is able to dictate their own timelines based on what their business looks like at the time. And within the companies, there could be variation in the expertise areas as well. So just be mindful that it will look different depending on which position you are applying to.
Thanks, Caitlin. For the next question we have, it's for the clinical development position, do you mostly work on early or late clinical development trials, or do you overlook all types of trials from early to late?
Hey, thanks for the question. So for my position, I am working supporting 2 phase 3 trials within Alnylam, within the operations department of clinical development. Although I am primarily supporting trials in late stage development, I am still getting experiences by sitting in on meetings as well as various projects on early phase development. The fellowship is really going to be focused on developing you as a future drug developer and will ultimately result in a gambit of experiences that range from early to late stage clinical development.
Thanks, Thomas. For the next question we have is, during normal times, how often would all Northeastern Fellows meet either through professional events or networking events?
Hi, Jen. I can take this one. This is Wynn. So in terms of how often we meet, in person, not so often right now. Sometimes we do meet up for an occasional meal here and there. Currently, Boston does have a rule that you cannot congregate in larger groups than 6. But in normal times, when it comes to professional development, we have teaching and learning seminars for approximately 1.5 to 2 hours once a month. And then depending on what semester you're assigned to and what courses you elect to help teach and facilitate, those courses are scheduled for 3 hours, but they typically don't go up to 3 hours.
Thanks, Wynn. The next question we have is regarding industry internship. So is an industry internship crucial for getting a fellowship?
Hi, Jen. This is Caitlin. I can take this one. So an industry internship or even API rotation is not required. There are many ways to build up the transferable skills that we talked about earlier in the presentation, such as project management, working in teams, communication, and ultimately the reason that PharmDs are useful in the industry is for that clinical training that they have. So those experiences are also important. If you do not have direct industry experience, just make sure that you are focusing on those transferable skills that you have from other experiences and that you feel comfortable and confident communicating those in the interview process.
Hey everyone, I also just wanted to take a second to introduce Donnie Lee. He will be taking your questions in the chat. Donnie is the first year medical affairs fellow at Bluebird Bio. Unfortunately, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties, but he is still here and he'll be answering questions as they come in the chat as well.
Thanks, Lauren. The next question we have is, what experience or activities make a good candidate for a fellowship with Northeastern?
Hey, this is Thomas, and I'll take this one. So essentially, what we're really looking for are really well-rounded candidates, candidates that can showcase that they have been involved in extracurriculars throughout pharmacy school, as well as unique experiences that may be really applicable to the functional area of interest in which you're applying. And then also, I would also stress that any sort of leadership experience is really transferable across any function. So being able to showcase that in your CV and then also be able to speak on it well in your interviews will be crucial as you're going through the application process within Northeastern.
Thanks, Thomas. The next question we have here is, what types of questions should be answered on a letter of intent? Is one needed for each company that the candidate applies to?
So just a reminder from our presentation earlier, it's not required that you write a specific letter of intent for each company. However, it is recommended since people at the company will be reading your letter of intent as well. In terms of types of questions that should be answered in the LOI, it's important to highlight why we should pick you and why you belong at this company. I would say those are the two primary questions that should be answered, highlighting your strengths and maybe some really important experiences that either are on your CV or off your CV. It's truly your opportunity to shine as a candidate and highlight things that you might not otherwise always talk about.
Thanks, Wynn. The next question we have here is, what is the retention rate of fellows at the various companies?
Hi, this is Wynn again. I'm the first fellow at my company, so we don't have an historical retention rate. However, when I was interviewing for the company and I spoke to my preceptors about what their plans for retention are, I remember my associate director saying she wants to clone herself. So I took that as a strong indication that they have a very strong desire to retain their fellows, at least at Blueprint, especially since we have many drugs coming down the pipeline and are hiring like crazy, to be honest.
Hi, this is Caitlin. I'll just chip in. So the retention rate will differ at every company, of course, but one of the wonderful things about being in biotech is these are rapidly expanding and growing companies, and so the opportunities are truly endless, and the networking that you experience at a smaller company really gives you great visibility and poises you well to be retained after your fellowship.
Thank you both. The next question is looking at the overall work culture, both the NEU fellowship program and at each company.
Hey, this is Thomas, and I'll take this one. In terms of Alnylam Pharmaceuticals, I'm going to start off with addressing the culture there. One of our core values is open culture, and this is something that is evident, and I can attest to, even though I am starting virtually and I haven't been in the office yet, in the fact that everybody's willing to help you out with whatever task or project in which you're completing. Everybody's offering their assistance and willing to set up one-on-ones with you to address questions that can be about just generally for your career or about the work in which you're doing. So I can attest for Alnylam as well as all the other partner companies as being ones in which that really emphasize and stress the open culture within their companies. Within Northeastern, the relationship that we have with the faculty is one in which where we have really open channels for communication, and we are able to access them as resources for as a sounding board or as a mentor in any sort of issue that may come up at work and or related activities within Northeastern.
Thank you, Thomas. The next question we have is, do people outside of your department know the role of a fellow at your company?
Hi, this is Wynn. So people at Blueprint are extremely familiar with what a fellow is, and I'm extremely grateful for that. My team is there's a lot of PharmDs on my team, sorry, and most of them actually came from fellowship themselves. My VP of Global Medical, he actually managed the fellowship at BMS, and my VP of US Medical actually was a prior fellowship director for Alnylam Pharmaceuticals before coming to Blueprint. Both of my preceptors have also come from extensive industry experience, and my fellowship director on the Blueprint side did her fellowship at Bayer. So they're very familiar with what a fellow does. And I know, Donnie, I would love to hear what your take on this is as well.
Okay, we're just going to move to the next one. What are the important soft skills needed for a medical affairs fellow, and how did you gain those skills? Some examples through leadership positions, API rotations, etc.
Thanks, Jen. So as a medical affairs fellow, for me personally, this is just my opinion, and I think every team will differ. But for me personally, when it comes to medical affairs, it's extremely important to be able to communicate to many different kinds of audiences effectively. And this goes from being able to communicate in simple terms for a patient who's trying to enroll in a clinical trial, all the way to being able to present scientific data to a healthcare provider or a key opinion leader. Through my APPEs, I made sure that I participated and conducted a lot of presentations, particularly scientific, so that I would be able to prove that skill. And part of my interview process was also to deliver a scientific presentation. So I would say definitely focus on your public speaking, being able to build the intuition to sense and predict what kinds of questions are going to be asked of you, since in medical affairs, you are expected to be an expert of your particular disease state.
Thanks, Wen. The next question we have here is, what's your policy to international students? Are you accepting international students for the upcoming recruitment cycle? And I can actually answer this one. As an international applicant, you must be aware that the program is designed for PharmD graduates, and all fellows must be eligible for licensure in the state of Massachusetts. But we are accepting international applicants for this recruitment cycle. All right, and the next question we have here is, what can I do to be successful at virtual mid-year?
Hey, this is Thomas, and I'll take this one. Ultimately, you want to be able to speak to and execute on the practice in which you're going to be going on and going through in the preparation for the application cycle, but most importantly, be yourself. I think that although we're interviewing you, I think from the perspective of a candidate, what I did was I tried to utilize the interviews as a way for me to interview who it would be that I would be working with, including the fellows as well as the management, because ultimately you're going to be working with these people very intimately, also during long hours for at least for the duration of your fellowship program, if not beyond that as well. So you want to ensure that you are as open as possible and you're being yourself so that you can get a gauge for the culture of the company, as well as get a feel for the work style, as well as the levels of communication that you're going to be sort of experiencing with the people in which you're going to be working with.
Great. We did get a follow-up question asking if you have to be eligible for licensure in the state of Massachusetts specifically. And actually, it can be in any state in the United States. I want to clarify that, not just in the state of Massachusetts. Then the next question we have here is, how does Northeastern and the sponsored companies bring diversity and inclusion to the work culture?
I could take this one. So some activities that we do to include diversity and inclusion in the culture, it was a big part of our onboarding. We had some diversity training while we were onboarding that were targeted at outreach and making sure that we as fellows are aware of what is important with diversity and inclusion in the workplace, as well as a lot of individual companies do have diversity and inclusion programs that as a fellow you're eligible to take part in. So there are a lot of optional trainings and presentations in particular that each individual company has. So not only do you have diversity and inclusion training that's through the route of Northeastern, but a lot of individual companies will also have some sort of resource for that.
Great. The next question we have here today is there a limit to the number of positions that a candidate can apply to?
Hi, this is Caitlin. I can take this one. So while there is no limit, it's important to consider your own bandwidth for how many applications and interviews you can reasonably go through while still demonstrating that you have researched the company and the position to a good extent. So sometimes we get questions about this process being virtual this year. If you're not having a time constraint like you would typically at mid-year with how many interviews you could attend, could you theoretically apply to more? And I would still say that it's important to remember that adequate research and preparation for interviews does take time. And so that needs to be considered as you make a game plan for the application cycle.
Great, thanks, Caitlin. The next question is the phone screening scheduled at an agreed time, or is the time not specified on the particular day? If you miss a phone call at rotation, are you still able to call back?
Hey, I can take this one. This is a really good question. Ultimately, all Northeastern affiliated companies are going to do their best to accommodate for your busy API and work schedules. We will make you aware of any sort of interview as well as phone screens prior to them actually being conducted. So you can rest assured knowing that we're going to make you aware of the time in which we would like to have you interview for the phone screen as well as the interviews going forward in the virtual interview process.
Okay, the next question we have here is for an HEOR fellow. How much of your research is performed independently versus through a vendor? And I can answer this. Every company is different. From what we've seen so far, we'll initiate the initial research into the project to formalize the strategy behind the project. Once we are sure what we want to assess, typically a vendor will execute the creation of a project or model. After that, we may test the data for insights on our end apart from the explicit results of the model. And the next question is regarding the application. So could you elaborate on the statement? Please describe in detail any education, employment experience, or professional licenses you've obtained and or that were revoked within the last 10 years that are not included on your resume or CV, and provide some examples of what would go here.
Hi, Jen. This is Caitlin. This is a good question. So if you don't believe that you have anything to go in this field, it can be left blank, or you could say not applicable. This would really apply to anyone who was dismissed from a program, who was dismissed from a job for any reason, or perhaps had an intern license that was revoked or any disciplinary action. So this likely would not apply to everyone who is applying. So if you don't feel like it applies to you, please just put not applicable.
Thanks, Caitlin. The next question we have here is, how did you decide between a fellowship versus a residency, if any of our speakers on our panel have considered a residency before?
Hey, I can take this one. So for me personally, I decided to go for a fellowship because I knew that I was interested in clinical development and more specifically had experience in operations, and having that exposure to execution of clinical trials from a sponsor level was something in which I knew that I really want to be a part of. So I knew from about in my P2 year that I wanted to pursue a fellowship. I understand that it's a decision that you all may not make until maybe later on into your pharmacy education, but regardless of whatever time in which you start, you can still put together a really strong application as long as you put together the things in which we've mentioned in this presentation that we're looking for in terms of transferable skills for each respective functional area. And also, I do want to put in as a caveat that due to our constrained, not constrained, but more so timelines, you can still apply for residency programs if it's something in which you're interested in and you're still on the border about applying to both. Just be sure that whatever you're applying towards within the Northeastern Fellowship Program, that you are confident that you could see yourself being there prior to submitting that application. So I just want to stress that if this is something in which is a decision that's really tough for you, you still have that option and you should still pursue the opportunity to apply for residency programs if that's something that you're interested in.
Great, thank you, Thomas. The next question we have here is for continuing education support. Is it limited to specific majors or can it be something else besides an MBA?
Hi, Jen. I can take this. So it is not limited to a specific program. You can explore the Northeastern website and look at all of the graduate options, and those would all be something that could be on the table for you. So we do have some fellows in the program, for example, who are pursuing a master's in regulatory affairs. There are also certificate programs if that is something that is of interest and you are concerned about the time commitment of a full master's program. So I would encourage you, if you're interested in pursuing further education, to explore the Northeastern University website for all of the possibilities available to you.
Great, thank you, Caitlin. The next question is, what was the hardest part of transitioning from pharmacy school into a fellowship?
Hi, Jen. This is Wynn. I would say the most difficult thing between transitioning from pharmacy school into a fellowship is that you go from a role where you're receiving and applying a lot of clinical information in clinical settings to a role where there's actually a lot of project management, a lot of meetings. To be honest, I've never spoken so much in a day as much as I have after starting fellowship. So be prepared to talk, and people will definitely care about your insight and what you have to say and your feedback about a project. There will also be times where you have to vouch for a project or vouch for one of your own views, which I don't think pharmacy school really prepares you to do that much unless it's in a clinical setting. So I would say that was the biggest transition for me, was managing lots of different projects across many different teams and vendors, which take care of our external activities.
Hey, this is Thomas, and I also want to pitch into that. So I think that what's really important to understand about a difference that at least I saw was really within pharmacy school, what you need to learn to ultimately be a great and responsible pharmacist is kind of spelled out for you. But within the fellowship program, you're responsible for identifying the key experiences to help you get to where you need to be. And where that road ends up and how you get to that end destination is entirely on you and what you want out of your own career. So identifying that and being able to act upon it within your fellowship, especially early, was something in which that kind of caught me off guard early. So I just want to forewarn you all that, if you want to go down this path, you want to have that mentality that you want to seek out the experiences that will let you get to where you want to be 5, maybe 10 years down the road from now.
Thank you both. The next question we have here is, one of the speakers on our panel mentioned that her VP is a PharmD, and this candidate was hoping that others could share about the PharmD representation among leadership at their respective companies or departments.
Hi, this is Caitlin. So again, I'm Regulatory Affairs at Alnylam. What I really love about my teams that I'm on and the regulatory affairs department is that while we do have a lot of PharmDs, and so it is really understood the type of contribution that a PharmD can make, we also have people that are contributing from a research background, as well as several colleagues who were trained either in research or clinical practice abroad. And so while they're not necessarily PharmDs, I learn a lot from them. And so I find that to be a really enriching experience that adds on to the already strong clinical foundation that I feel that I have. But to reiterate, there are several PharmDs on my team that really pave the way for what a career can look like when you're coming from that training background.
Hey, this is Thomas. I'm going to quickly add in on that as well, in that the clinical development space, at least within Alnylam, is one in which that we are kind of still warming up to the idea of pharmacists within the department. But even if you see that in your interviews, or if you are interested in applying for our position, I'm going to actually kind of advocate that that's actually a good thing, for the reason that your clinical experience is something that's like extremely valuable within your team. Since you may be one of the few people in which that have that clinical background, so they're really going to rely on you heavily to chip in and contribute to the clinical aspects of the study. At least I can say that's true for the operations side of our company.
Thank you, Thomas. The next question we have here is, do you suggest only applying to companies in which you are knowledgeable about their therapeutic areas, or can we apply to areas where we are new to?
I would say being knowledgeable about a therapeutic area isn't necessarily a requirement to become a good fellow. The current disease state that I'm working on is systemic mastocytosis, which is something that was never taught in pharmacy school and probably will never be taught in pharmacy school. But just showing that you have a passion for helping patients, and that you are going to be an avid learner, and that you're willing to be a self-starting learner is extremely important, because regardless of who you are and what stage you are in your career, people move around in the industry all the time, and they switch between different therapeutic areas, and they go through disease state training. So what's more important here is not necessarily what you know, but what you're willing to do in order to learn what you need to know.
Thanks, Wynn. The next question we have here is, who should the cover letters be addressed to when applying for the program?
Hi, Jen. I can take this one. So they should be addressed to our fellowship director, which is Dr. Andrew Orskirvin, and his contact information and all the details about exactly how that should be addressed is available in the brochure on the website.
Thanks, Caitlin. The next question we have here are for GSK fellows, so I'll be answering this question. And they're asking if there are virtual tours for GSK, and we can also open up to the other companies here as well. But for GSK specifically, we haven't. There has been some discussion on going on site and scheduling a virtual tour so that we can showcase it to you all. But nothing is finalized yet, but we will get the details out to you shortly. I don't know if anyone else wants to chip in on this question.
We've discussed virtual and video tours to be made at Blueprint as well. Ultimately, it will come down to security concerns and security clearances in order to record inside of the office. So that will be pending.
Thanks, Wynn. Next question is for a candidate that's not a current P4. The candidate says, I'm not a current P4. I graduated in 2019. I don't have a part-time job as a pharmacist. So she wouldn't be able to take off just for an afternoon if an interview is a day that she works. And they want to know if there's some flexibility in scheduling.
Hi, I can take this one. This is Caitlin. So this is a great question. I think it's excellent that people from all at all stages in their career considering fellowships, then that is definitely welcome. So each company has their own way of scheduling, but typically, and I can speak for Alnylam, is that when scheduling interviews, there would likely be multiple options available to you. So that is something that could be flexible, but again, it would depend on the individual company. And then we'll just stress too to be aware that if you are planning on applying to multiple positions, it is likely that you would have to schedule several different interviews throughout the next few months. And so whether that's communicating with a preceptor or a boss, having those conversations in advance may be helpful in arranging your schedule. And hopefully that can be accommodated for you.
Thanks, Caitlin. The next question is regarding pharmacists who have been practicing for some time and would now like to do a fellowship to transition to the industry. So the question is asking if they're still eligible to apply and if they're still considered as a candidate.
Hey, I'm gonna take this one. In terms of people who are pharmacists that are practicing, we're still gonna evaluate your application, and you are still eligible to apply to any position of interest. You just want to kind of go about the process similarly to, however you would have conducted it, regardless of what year you are in the process or how far off from school you are, excuse me.
Thanks, Thomas. This next question is also for you. This candidate wants to know, are there any opportunities for clinical science experiences as well, knowing that your fellowship is in clinical development?
Hey, thanks for the question. With regards to my experience, the specific clinical development fellowship program is actually only a year's worth of operations as a rotation, and then you are going to transition over to clinical research after that year. You are going to get exposure with the clinical scientists on the team, as well as clinical science related projects throughout the duration of the fellowship program. So although we are housed, I'm technically starting in operations, I'm still getting a gambit of experiences that encompass all of clinical development. So this is like a really robust experience and will allow for you to get experiences that would prepare you to be a clinical scientist as well.
Thanks, Thomas. The next question we have is regarding relationships with preceptors. So this candidate is asking, how involved are preceptors in the operations of a fellow, and what is your relationship with your preceptor like?
Hi, this is Wynn, and I can start this one off on the Blueprint Medicine side. I have a great relationship with both my fellowship director and my direct preceptor that I report to on a daily basis. Anytime I need help or question about anything, which is pretty often because I don't have a fellow a year above me, I just message her. I'm like, hey, can I call you right now? And she'll say yes or no. So we talk almost every day, and we're managing a lot of the same projects, and we're actually grabbing dinner tomorrow. So overall, your preceptor is going to be your biggest advocate, and it's really important to develop that trusting relationship and learn as much from them as possible.
Hi, this is Caitlin. I can take this one as well. So like Wynn, I also feel that I have an excellent and open relationship with my preceptor. She really acts as a wonderful sounding board for me. One thing to note is your relationship with the preceptor in fellowship may look different than it does in API rotations. So for me, I am not working directly under my preceptor. I do projects for multiple people within the department. And so she is really someone who can help me and give me the guidance to complete those projects and navigate those relationships. And then as a supplement to that, there are several alumni of the fellowship program that retained at Alnylam, as well as my second year fellow, to offer support. And so it's really resulted in a very supportive and constructive environment for me.
Hey, so with regards to this question, I'm just going to echo everything that Wynn and Caitlin said, in the fact that my preceptor and my supervisors have been excellent people for me to reference for any sort of confusion or questions that I have on projects that I'm working on or assignments that have been given to me. Also, I've been able to find people within the organization that are like sponsors for me as well that can advocate for the work that I'm doing very early on in my experience. And this is something in which I can attest is true for the Alnylam as well as the Northeastern Pharmaceutical Industry Fellowships.
Thanks, guys. The next question is regarding Northeastern specifically. How has being part of the Northeastern University Industry Fellowship Program helped PharmD students get better opportunities in the job market?
Although we're fellows who haven't entered the job market yet, so far 3 months into our fellowship, I can see there are many things that are valuable about the Northeastern University component. I mean, we really get to teach classes, like right now I'm teaching classes on a weekly basis, and I never really understood that teaching is a really difficult skill to pick up, but it's also really transferable to any job really, especially in medical affairs where you are presenting and teaching data to different teams all the time. Of course, Northeastern also helps pay for any classes and professional development or master's programs that you would like to take. And the partnerships that Northeastern has with the biotech companies is also extremely beneficial and unique in that the experiences that you gain at these biotech companies are so rapid and so quick and have such a large breadth that you will be a great full-time employee for any future position that you choose to apply to at any company.
Thanks, Wynn. We have time for just one more question. As a fellow in a small biotech, what are your perceived benefits of being a fellow in a small versus large company size?
Okay, I'm going to start off with this one. I think that everybody's going to have something to contribute for this answer, but in terms of working for a small company, I think that the level of exposure that you get to vertically and horizontally within your specific EA or your expertise area or others in collaboration with other functional areas is something in which that I'm not sure that you will get that level of exposure when you work in big pharma. Also, just the level of visibility that I have on the projects that I'm working on. This is something in which that gets directly reported to our director, as well as gets exposure across other even higher levels of management. So for me personally, just the level of exposure and the visibility on the work that I'm doing is something in which that I really value at Alnylam, and I think is a benefit for working at biotech versus big pharma.
I can't speak for experiences at Big Pharma because I've never worked for a big pharmaceutical company. However, I know that a lot of the projects and experiences that I've had the opportunity to take on at Blueprint Medicines are extremely unique based on the reactions that I get from students. So far, I've been able to manage a vendor independently in order to start my own project that I'm going to be presenting to the call center soon. Tomorrow, I'm going to be training the European call center on 12 SRLs that I've built over the past week. And on Friday, I'm going to be training both the US and European field medical teams. So just that level of exposure and the fact that I've been able to get to this level after 3 months of fellowship is just something that is just mind-blowing to me and I'm extremely proud of.
All right, everybody. We're going to wrap it up. I know that a lot of questions have come in. If we didn't have a chance to get to your question today, we definitely recommend connecting with the fellows directly. You can find us on LinkedIn or in the brochures to find our names. We just wanted to thank you for attending our webinar today. Make sure that you sign up for updates from NU fellowships and you come to the website for advice, tips, and the job postings. For an additional resource to help
navigate your fellowship search and as well as learn a little bit more about the application process as well as the functional areas in depth, go to www.a27p.com. We also want to remind you that if you can find more information at nufellowship.com, and then you can email us at pharmdfellowships@northeastern.edu. You can find us on LinkedIn at NU Pharmaceutical Industry Fellowships and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at NU Fellowship. Thank you all for joining.